Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 222. Mount Jiao frightening change. Xuemeng stood there in a daze for a long time before he suddenly regained his senses. He shouted angrily at Mei Hangxiu, "You dog, who are you calling stupid?" Xue Zhenyang pulled him back. "Meng Er. This person said I'm stupid." Okay, you heard wrong." Hangxiu clearly didn't say anything. "That's because he whispered it to my ear." While they were making a ruckus, Zhang Shi was checking the wounded and their overall situation. Afterwards, Zhang Shi ordered everyone to rest in place for a while. Those who needed to treat their wounds should treat their wounds, and those who needed to meditate should meditate. He had no choice. Their fiercest fighting force had been greatly depleted. The situation was like that of a bow that hadn't been fully drawn yet, but the arrowhead was already blunted. If they rashly continued to move forward like this, they might not be able to deal with anything they might come across with. After giving these orders, Zhang Shi walked to Nangongxi. "Nangong, I have something to ask you." "Please go ahead, sect leader Zhang." Zhang Shi didn't continue speaking, but instead, he glanced at Ye Wangzi first. Nangongxi said, "She doesn't need to leave." "It's better if she left for a little while," Zhang Shi said. His gaze fell on Nangongxi's chest, where Nangongxi's spiritual core was located. After Ye Wangzi left, Zhang Shi sat down next to Nangongxi. "About your spiritual core, are you planning to hide it from her?" Nangongxi's eyes dimmed. "I don't know how to tell her about it." "Are you afraid that she will turn her back on you if she learned of it?" "If so, then you're overthinking it." "Miss Ye isn't." "No." Nangongxi interrupted Zhang Shi. "I'm not afraid that she'll give up on me. What I'm scared of is how much it will upset her." Zhang Shi was silent for a while. He seemed to be stung by Nangongxi's inexplicable confidence. He sneered. "You're really confident. Sect Master Zhang is wrong. It's not that I'm self-assured. I simply believe in her." Zhang Shi could hear the stubbornness in his tone, so he said indifferently, "You're like a tiger who has lost its claws, yet you still speak to me in such a tone. Aren't you afraid that I'll make trouble for you in the future?" "You won't." Zhang Shi paused. "Does that mean you trust me?" "Along the way, I also learned what kind of person sect leader Zhang really is." Nangongxi said, "That's why I said those words to you when I thought I was going to die." Zhang Shi had been staring at Nangongxi the whole time. He only looked away when Nangongxi mentioned this. "Now that you're still alive, do those words still count?" "Yes," Nangongxi said, "once we defeat Su Xuanglin, I will tell everyone clearly." Zhang Shi didn't say anything. After a long time, he said, "Nangongxi, it's a pity that I won't see the Rufeng sect flourish in your hands. Otherwise, you could have been considered a worthy opponent to compete with." Nangongxi answered very calmly but with a hint of pride in his voice. "Sect leader, you're wrong again. I've been fortunate enough to learn what was the best about the Rufeng sect." Zhang Shi rarely didn't refute others and rarely didn't ridicule others. It was even rarer for him to admire or agree with others. But this time, he remained silent for a long time and didn't try to deny Nangongxi's words. Finally, he said, "Let's not talk about this anymore. I have something more important to ask you." "I know what sect leader wants to ask." Nangongxi stroked Nao Beijin, who was lying in his quiver. The Fey wolf was injured, the cut on its forehead was still bleeding. "But really I don't know why the Jiao spirit suddenly lost control and went against Grand Sect leader's orders. I also didn't think it was possible." Zhang Shi said, "No clues at all? Think about it again. Does the Rufeng sect have any other secrets related to this mountain?" Nangongxi shook his head and said, "No. For generations, the Nangong clan has known that the Jiao spirit would obey the orders of the clan's heirs, but its absolute master is ancestor Zhang Ying. Absolutely no one else. Absolutely no one else. The first master that the Jiao Dragon soul recognizes is Grand Sect leader, and that will never change. Jiang Shi's eyes were unsettled as his facial expression became vicious because of the deadlock. How did Su Xuanglin do it? I don't know how either. Nangongxi suddenly paused. Jiang Shi thought that he had recalled something, so he turned to look at him, only to find that he was staring at a person in the distance. Jiang Shi followed his gaze and saw Nangonglu eating an orange. Nangongxi had been trying not to look at his father, who was being used as a chess piece. However, when his eyes met Nangongxi's, his expression immediately turned extremely painful. Jiang Shi was actually around the same age as Su Xuanglin and Xue Zhenyang, but because of the difference in mental cultivation methods, he still looked young and handsome. However, this had nothing to do with his state of mind. His state of mind was not as grand as it had been a long time ago. When he looked at Nangongxi, he was unable to bear it any longer and said, "Don't look anymore. Stop looking." Nangongxi seemed to have used up all his remaining strength to tear his gaze away from his father. When he lowered his eyes, his shoulders seemed to tremble slightly. In the end, he buried his face in his palms, but he couldn't hide the sobbing in his voice. He murmured hoarsely, trying to change the topic, "I also don't understand how Su Xuanglin did it. That is the Jiao Dragon that was tamed by the Grand Sect leader." As he talked, his shoulders trembled more and more. Jiang Shi was stiff and his expression was indifferent. But in the end, he reached out and patted Nangongxi's shoulder. He seemed to want to comfort Nangongxi. However, he had never comforted anyone before. In the end, he just said dryly, "It doesn't matter. Everyone has their own fate. Although you and your father are in this situation now, you were once father and son. Look at me. I'm in my prime, but I don't have any children. Think on the bright side." Of course, Nangongxi didn't pay attention to him after he finished speaking. He also felt that his words were worse than not saying anything. Jiang Shi got up and said awkwardly, "I'm going to take a look at other places. You rest for a while. We'll continue later. By the way, what's in front of us?" Nangongxi answered in a muffled voice, "The Dragon Soul Pool." "What's it for?" "That's the blood pool where the Jiao Dragon's spirit is sacrificed." Nangongxi continued, "The evil dragon's primordial spirit is sleeping in the pool. Every year, the people of the Rufeng sect pay respect and bring offerings to it." Jiang Shi frowned when he heard this. In the end, he said, "I hope nothing else happens over there." Everyone rested in the front hall for less than an hour. The injured and those who had used up too much spiritual power gradually recovered with the help of the healing cultivators. Jiang Shi looked at the heaven and hell created by Su Xuanglin on both sides. The two extremes made him frown even more. What was Su Xuanglin intending to do with such a useless thing? Was it simply just for show? Hearing Nangonglu, who was turned into a chess piece, call him "Your Majesty," it seemed that Su Xuanglin thought of himself as the emperor and treated these Zhenlong chess puppets, who were divided into black and white, good and evil, as his subjects. He looked around and finally found Nangonglu. Nangonglu was sitting by his bamboo basket and slowly peeling oranges. Jiang Shi paused for a moment. Then, he suddenly leaned over and asked the question he had asked him before, "Can you take us to His Majesty?" Nangonglu still gave the same answer as before, "His Majesty has matters to attend to. How can he see you just because you want to?" Jiang Shi flicked his sleeve and said unhappily, "You're useless. A good-for-nothing is really just a good-for-nothing. Whether you're alive or made into a chess piece, you're still trash." After being scolded, Nangonglu shrunk his neck and hugged his orange basket with a cowardly look. After a while, he actually burst into tears. "Why are you so fierce? I'm useless. I'm a good-for-nothing. What can you do even if you get angry at me?" His wailing was so loud that it attracted the attention of the people around him. By that time, Chu Wanning was almost done meditating. He frowned and said, "This Nangong Lu is so strange." Mo Ran asked, "What do you mean?" "I'm not sure." Chu Wanning said, "I feel that this person is Nangong Lu, but there's something wrong with him. He doesn't seem to be the Nangong Lu I know." Mo Ran stared at them. Jiang Shi was glaring at Nangong Lu with a livid expression. Nangong Lu was sobbing and occasionally rubbing his eyes with his two hands. Mo Ran looked at his actions and indeed felt that something was wrong. It was indescribably out of place. It was as if he was looking at a child with a middle-aged man's appearance. It gave him goosebumps. Suddenly, Mo Ran was stunned and muttered, "A child? What?" Mo Ran suddenly turned his head and asked, "Shizun, don't you think that he acts like a child?" As he spoke, he glanced sideways at Nangong Lu for a while. Seeing that Nangong Lu was actually blowing his nose with his sleeve, he said, "He's acting like a 5 or 6-year-old child." When he said this, Chu Wanning looked again. Sure enough, it was true. Although Nangong Lu still looked like he was in his 40s, his every move revealed a kind of naivete and childishness. Chu Wanning muttered, could it be that Su Xuanglin did something to him, so that his memory was only retained until he was 5 or 6 years old? Mo Ran said, "Shizun, wait for me. I'll check it out." "What are you going to do?" Mo Ran didn't answer. Under everyone's gaze, he walked to Nangong Liu's side, picked up an orange and handed it to him. He said tentatively, "Don't cry. Here, eat an orange." "I'm not eating. I've already eaten. This is for His Majesty." Mo Ran put the orange back into the basket and asked, "Who is His Majesty?" Jiang Shi said, "What's the use? Didn't I ask him this question a while ago?" Sure enough, Nangong Lu answered, "His Majesty. His Majesty is His Majesty. Who else could it be?" Mo Ran wasn't discouraged. Instead, he asked a second question, "Well, His Majesty is His Majesty. You're such a loyal subject. His Majesty will be very happy to learn about it." "Oh right, I've been asking you about His Majesty, but I haven't asked you yet. Little brother, what's your name?" Huang Xiaoyu was impatient. He sneered and was about to speak when Jiang Shi stopped him and shook his head. He also faintly felt that something was amiss. Nangong Lu, who was holding a basket of oranges, looked at Mo Ran for a while before saying timidly, "My name is Nangong Lu." Mo Ran smiled and touched Nangong Liu's head. He asked calmly, "Let's get to know each other. My name is Mo Ran. I'm 22 years old this year. What about you?" I'm 5 years old." For a moment, there was complete silence. Although Nangong Liu's answer wasn't loud, the people around them were quietly looking in their direction. Therefore, his trembling answer of "I'm 5 years old" was like a clap of thunder breaking through the sky, exploding in the hall. Almost everyone was stunned. If it weren't for the tense situation, many people present would have laughed out loud until tears flowed down their cheeks. 5 years old. 5 years old. 3 years ago, if they were asked to believe that the leader of the world's #1 sect would actually cower beside a basket of oranges and mutter, "I'm 5 years old," these people would probably rather believe that pigs could climb trees. However, at this moment, Nangong Lu clearly said the sentence. The group of people was dumbfounded. They froze in place and looked at each other, not knowing what was going on. Jiang Shi stepped forward and asked sternly, "What do you do in the palace every day?" Nangong Lu quickly shrank behind Mo Ran. He tugged at Mo Ran's sleeve and said, "Gaga, I don't want to talk to him. This uncle is so fierce." Jiang Shi was speechless. Nangong Lu was older than him. Even in his dreams, he never thought that there would be a day when Nangong Lu would call him uncle. Mo Ran also couldn't stand it. If it was really a 5-year-old child, it would be fine. However, at this time, the person who pulled him was a man with wrinkled eyes. Moran's mouth twitched. He coughed twice and comforted him, all right, you don't have to pay attention to him. Then let me ask you, what do you do in the palace every day? Jiang Shi widened his eyes. At this time, he somewhat admired Moran. This man was good at this. How could he tolerate this? I pick oranges every day. After picking them, I wash them and carry them to His Majesty. I wait for him to come out and eat them. Nangong Lu said, His Majesty likes to eat oranges the most. He can eat a whole basket of them every day. At the foot of the mountain, there used to be a kind of tree that only blossoms but doesn't bear fruit. His Majesty said it was boring, so they were all replaced with orange trees. I also think orange trees are good. The fruit is sweet. He talked endlessly. Suddenly, his eyes dimmed. It's a pity that His Majesty hasn't been in good health these days. After picking a basket of oranges, he can only eat half of them. Jiang Shi caught an important information. His Majesty hasn't been in good health recently. Nangong Lu was very vengeful though. He pouted and puffed up his cheeks. You're so annoying. I won't talk to you. Jiang Shi held back for a moment, but he couldn't. He quickly turned his head and covered his mouth and nose with a handkerchief. Huang Xiaoyu asked with concern, Sect Leader Jiang, what's wrong? Don't talk to me. Jiang Shi frowned in disgust. He refused to look at the giant child Nangong Lu squatting there. I'm fucking disgusted. Moran asked, what's wrong with His Majesty? It's just that he always coughs and what he coughs out is blood. He's so skinny, yet he refuses to eat. Many parts of his body are rotten. As Nangong Lu spoke, his tears dripped down like a pillar with a broken string. He cried sorrowfully, I'm so worried about him. If he's gone, what should I do? In the future, no one will play with me, talk to me or feed me oranges. He feeds you oranges. However, from what he saw last time at the Rufeng sect, Nangong Lu and Su Xuanglin had a blood feud between them. It was already a miracle that Su Xuanglin didn't continue to feed his brother the lingqi fruit. Yet, he was feeding him oranges. He couldn't imagine it. Jiang Shi fell into deep thought. Many parts of his body are rotting. Xue Zhenyang said, it sounds like the backlash of the Zhenlong chess formation. Moran was also very clear about this. The Zhenlong chess formation was one of the 3 forbidden techniques. If the caster didn't have enough spiritual power and forcibly controlled the chess pieces too many times, his body would slowly begin to rot. When he first started to cultivate in his previous life, his body had also begun to rot starting from his toes. At that time, Moran was afraid of being discovered by Chu Wanning, so he didn't dare to act rashly. Later, he invented the shared heart array, so he could continue to cultivate the forbidden technique. By the time he became the emperor, Taxian Jun, he already had abundant and vigorous spiritual power that he didn't need to use the shared heart array anymore to control thousands of Zhenlong chess pieces, be it people or monsters or animals. However, the festered little toe on his left foot could never be restored. Moran couldn't help but feel curious. The fierce corpses outside were all controlled using the shared heart formation. Only the chess pieces that could move freely in the hall were being controlled by Su Xuanglin's spiritual power. Since Su Xuanglin couldn't control so many chess pieces, why did he need to do something that was not worth it? It was useless to continue staying here, so Jiang Shi said, let's go forward. The door to the Dragon Soul Pool also needed a mechanism to open, but this mechanism wasn't tampered. After it was activated, the front and back doors inlaid with the 7 stars array immediately rumbled. The stone door retracted into the wall, and the middle hall of the Rufeng sect's ancestral temple slowly revealed its appearance in front of everyone. It was a hexagonal sealed chamber. The walls were cold and damp, and there was a sculpture of a dragon at the ceiling. Its muscles and bones were distinct and its eyes were wide open. The dragon held an oil lamp in its mouth. It was unknown what kind of oil was lit inside, but the light it emitted was actually a deep blue. In the center of the hall, there was a pool with blood-red foam bubbling with hot steam coming out of it. Nangongsi said, "This is the Dragon Soul Pool. The primordial spirit of the demon dragon is sealed in this blood pool." Some people wanted to get nearer to take a closer look, but Nangongsi warned, "Don't look too much. This pool is full of evil qi. If you stare at it for too long, you will lose your mind. Let's go." The group walked past the blood pool one by one under the leadership of Nangongsi. They walked into the corridor behind the middle hall. Although it was dark and there was no light, Moran could feel that they were walking uphill. After walking for about an incense stick's worth of time, Nangongsi stopped. In front of him was a door that was narrower than the previous one, but it was decorated with jewels. "Once this door is opened, we'll reach the exit of the passageway after walking for a while." Nangongsi said, "After we go out, we will reach the last place in the heavenly palace called the Soul Summoning Platform." Su Xuanglin should be on the Soul Summoning Platform. Huang Xiaoyu suddenly asked, "Are there any other chambers in the heavenly palace of the Rufeng sect aside from these, the front hall, the dragon blood pool, and the Soul Summoning Platform?" "Yes. Is there no secret room?" In a moment of impatience, he almost said treasure room. Fortunately, he caught himself in time. He added, "I mean, Su Xuanglin could also be in another secret room." Nangongsi looked at him meaningfully. That kind of gaze made Huang Xiaoyu somewhat uneasy. Finally, Nangongsi said, "Let's go to the Soul Summoning Platform first." To open this last door, the blood of the Nangong clan was also required. Nangongsi smeared his blood on the eyes of the dragon engravings on the stone door. The mechanism on the door moved with a click and then they heard a faint sigh. Huang Xiaoyu was frightened as he asked, "Who's that?" Then he pointed at Nangongsi and said, "You rascal, you're not playing tricks, right? Are you trying to trick us?" Nangongsi said indifferently, "If Cultivator Huang doesn't trust me, it's not too late to leave now. You can sit in the main hall and wait." Of course, Huang Xiaoyu didn't want to, but before he went in, he took extra precaution. Along the way, he noticed that all the important doors required the blood of the Nangong clan to open. The legendary treasure room was probably the same. Therefore, before Huang Xiaoyu entered the door, he intentionally wiped his hand on the eye of the dragon and secretly stained it with Nangongsi's blood. All of a sudden, an empty voice rang out in this pitch-black passageway. "Who is it?" Huang Xiaoyu had a guilty conscience, so he was very startled that he almost jumped up. The others also looked around. Nangongsi said, "I am the 7th generation heir of the Rufeng sect, Nangongsi. Zhongli, respectfully welcomes." "Master." After the voice slowly uttered these words, it returned to silence. "Zhongli is the name of the Jiao dragon." Nangongsi said to Zhongxi, "Sect leader Zhang, please." Zhongxi looked at the passageway in front of him. About 100 feet away, there was a white light. Presumably, that was the Soul Summoning Platform. Zhongxi took a few steps forward. Suddenly, the ground shook violently again. The empty voice sounded again. "Zhongli, respectfully welcomes." "Master. What's wrong with this dragon?" Zhongxi frowned. "It's saying the same thing twice." However, Nangongsi's expression had already changed. He immediately turned his head to look in the direction of the Soul Summoning Platform. There was suddenly a faint flicker of light. Before he could see it clearly, he heard hissing sound which was immediately followed by a flood of light. Nangongsi's pupils suddenly shrank and he shouted, "Run!" End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 223. Mount Jiao Getaway. What was rushing towards them was not a flood at all. They were clearly poisonous snakes converging into a stream. In an instant, the narrow passageway was in chaos. Everyone was pushing and shoving each other. As a result, many were trampled to death. Jiangshi pushed Nangongxi forward. "You go on ahead first. I'll deal with this." As he spoke, he released some sparkling powder from his sleeves. When the snakes smelled the powder, they all froze and curled up in place, not daring to move forward anymore. Jiangshi angrily shouted to the front, "Calm down. Quickly retreat to the middle hall and don't push." He suppressed the snake tide and quickly caught up with the main group. When he retreated to the stone door, he found Nangongxi looking at the soaring dragon sculpture. He asked Nangongxi, "What's going on? The Jiao dragon spirit must be being controlled." Nangongxi said, "I want to go back and check the situation of the dragon soul pool." He was about to leave when Jiangshi grabbed him. "What about the snakes behind us? I didn't bring too much dispersing powder. After the effect of the powder wears off, they will definitely come back." Ye Wangzi, who was standing at the side, said, "I'll do it." She had been taught in Dark City of the Rufeng sect since she was a child, so she was better than anyone else at fighting in dark and narrow places. Although Nangongxi didn't want her to stay, Ye Wangzi's expression was firm. Moreover, there really wasn't a more suitable choice other than her, so in the end, Nangongxi could only pat her shoulder. "It's too dark here. I know you don't like it, but stay here for a while. I'll be back soon." Jiangshi and Nangongxi were the last to leave the passageway. As soon as they came out, Huang Xiaoyu rushed forward with a fierce posture. It really didn't look like an old man with white hair. "Nangongxi, you still dare to say it wasn't you?" Nangongxi had endured and tolerated this man for a long time. At this moment, he finally reached his limit. He shouted angrily, "If it was me, can you still be standing here? Get out of the way." Huang Xiaoyu was shocked at first and then he pointed at his nose. Look, the mask is finally being torn off. The foxtail has been revealed, right? You've been pretending to be cooperative all this time, but now that you're in your territory you're even talking back. Do you think that you're still that all-powerful direct descendant of the Rufeng sect? How dare you be so arrogant?" Huang Xiaoyu. Other than Nangongxi, there was another person who had reached his limit. Jiangshi really couldn't tolerate this anymore. He gritted his teeth and said coldly, "Don't think that I don't know what you're trying to do by being so aggressive." Huang Xiaoyu suddenly withdrew his hand. His expression changed, but he still forced himself to remain calm. "Sect leader Jiang, perhaps you can't understand this old man's feelings. I have a grudge against the Rufeng sect for killing my brother. I really can't understand Cultivator Wang's feelings." Jiangshi cut him off as he rolled his eyes and looked at him coldly. "After all, I really don't have the slightest interest in the Rufeng sect's hidden treasure room." His gaze was like two unsheathed blades. Huang Xiaoyu suddenly took 2 steps back and stared blankly at Jiangshi. His lips opened and closed, looking like a withered rat, but not a single word came out of his mouth. Jiangshi turned and said, "Nangong, you go and investigate." However, the Dragon Soul pool was just a small pool with empty walls. They could see everything at a glance. After carefully looking around several times, they didn't find anything strange. Nangongxi shook his head and said, "I'll go to the front hall and take a look." The front hall's furnishings were much more complicated, not to mention there were so many zhenlong chess pieces in it. Nangong Lu had been left in the hall earlier. When Nangongxi went in, he was hugging the basket of oranges and sleeping. He stood in front of his father for a while. His eyes were blank and empty, but they couldn't help but redden. He didn't dare to stand there for too long. He also didn't wake up his father, who was made into a chess piece. Instead, he looked at the chess pieces in the hall one by one, hoping to find some clues. Just now, when everyone was in the front hall, he didn't have the leisure to look carefully. He only knew that this place was divided into 2 parts, heaven and hell. At this moment, he carefully looked around and found many old friends. He saw his fourth uncle, who had always been at odds with Su Xuanglin, deep in the hell area, being roasted over a fire. He saw the maids in the Sansheng courtyard catching butterflies in the heaven area. He even saw his own grandfather. But Nangongsi didn't have much time to feel sad because he suddenly felt that he was about to see someone, that person. Then he heard it. He heard it amidst the tide of murmurs. A trembling voice, as soft as a mosquito's cry. See air. Nangongsi felt as if he was struck by lightning. Before he could turn around, tears already welled up in his eyes. He turned around. In the hazy mist, he could only see a blurry sky-blue figure. He ran towards that figure in a rush and shouted hoarsely, "Mother! Mother!" Tears streamed down his face but could see clearly. In the heaven area, there was a person standing gracefully. It was Nangongsi's mother, Rong Yan. Like Nangong Zhengying, this woman also had extremely strong willpower. So, even though Su Xuanglin messed up the mentality of the Zhenlong chess pieces in the main hall, and though Nangongsi looked very different from when he was young, she could still recognize Nangongsi when he entered her sight. She trembled and stretched out a stiff finger towards Nangongsi with great difficulty. "See, air." The clothes that Rong Yan was wearing were the same exact clothes she had when Nangongsi last saw here. As he knelt in front of her, it was as if he had returned to the past, to that ordinary night at the Rufeng sect. The mother went to the child's study to look for him. The full moon could be seen outside the window. Nangongsi knelt in front of her and raised his head to look at her. He had a lot of things he wanted to say, but in the end, the only thing that came out was a trembling sentence: "Ah Niang, the world praises but does not advise, the world criticizes but does not discourage." This was how things went wrong between them. His stern mother stood by the window, frowning as she asked, "What's the previous sentence?" The child stammered, but he couldn't answer. Later, she died too suddenly. When he knelt in front of her dark coffin, he was still unable to recite the last scripture that his mother had asked him to recite. After more than 10 years of haze, the dust had finally settled on this line: "Do not be encouraged by the world's praise, do not be discouraged by the world's slander." He knelt in front of her, in the same posture as when she left that night. Their figures finally overlapped with those of that last time. Only that time, they were filled with resentment, and this time, they were filled with pain. His beautiful mother of that time has now become someone's Zhenlong chess piece. Rong Yan caressed Nangongsi's hair and cheeks. Finally, she grasped his blood-stained hand and closed her eyes. "See air, mother's body is now under someone's control. I'm like a piece of meat on the chopping board. I can lose consciousness at any time. But see air, you have to believe. Mother's words are sincere." These words are all what mother was thinking before she left. Although mother hates your uncle's actions, mother is also grateful to him. "Mother, if he didn't turn me into a chess piece, how would I be able to see you again, tell you?" Rong Yan slowly and stiffly bowed. She trembled, reached out her hand, and then tightly hugged Nangongsi. Before mother left, the thing that mother regretted the most was. She choked, but it wasn't because she was going to be controlled by Su Xuanglin again. She hugged her child so tightly. She said with a trembling voice, "The thing that I regretted the most was that I had never hugged you properly like this. I have never hugged you like this. See air. Mother loves you." Nangongsi was already sobbing. I know, mother, I already knew since long time ago." Suddenly, the earth began to shake again. Rong Yan suddenly shivered, opened her eyes, and muttered, "Zhang Li's blood pact is about to be severed." "What? Zhang Li's blood contract is about to be severed? I'm here, I can see it every day." Rong Yan suddenly tensed up. "See air, nothing must happen to you. I have to stop him. I have to stop Nangongsu." Nangongsi wiped his tears and pulled his mother. Mother, what did you see here? What blood contract is about to be severed? Listen. Rongyan paused and her pupils contracted. For a moment, it seemed that she was about to be controlled again, but she gritted her teeth and used her body to resist the control of Zhenlong chess formation. Listen, Nangongsu collected 5 holy weapons. These 5 holy weapons have drunk the blood of 10,000 people. Together, they can sever the bond between the Jiao dragon and the Nangong family. Sever the bond. That's right, the dragon tendons were the first to be severed. Nangongsi was terrified, so those fierce corpses outside that suddenly appeared were actually freed because the dragon tendons no longer heed the grand sect leader's order. That's right. Rongyan said in a hoarse voice, the second one is the dragon scale. Nangongsi suddenly thought of those poisonous snakes that they encountered just now. They should have been transformed from the dragon scale. The third one is the dragon tail. Nangongsi turned pale. That vibration just now, was it because the dragon tail was severed from the bond? That's right, then the dragon head and finally the dragon body. Rongyan said, once Nangongsu successfully uses the 5th holy weapon, the entire Mount Jiao will go out of control, no longer recognizing the grand sect leader as its master. Her expression became painful again and she couldn't say anything else. Su Xuanglin seemed to have sensed her actions and was trying his best to overcome her senses and control her body. Rongyan wailed in a low voice, her slender pale fingers tightly buried in her hair bun, no. Mother. See air. His voice made her suddenly wake up. She was like a person who was dying of thirst but found a sweet spring. She tightly held him, her expression was somewhat panicked and helpless. It was an expression of helplessness that he had never seen on her face before. Nangongsi's heart ached as he held her in his arms. When he was still a child, his mother was always very stern and serious, she rarely hugged him. Now, he could finally protect his mother. Although it was just a mirage, it was just a body that retained a little awareness from when she was alive with her soul no longer there. But it was enough. Rongyan's body was bent, she slightly trembled in Nangongsi's arms. After a long time, she raised her head again, her face was full of tears of blood that flowed out of her Zhenlong chess piece. Nangongsi tasted bitterness in his throat. He raised his hand to help her wipe the tears, but no matter how much he wiped it off, it was still dirty. No matter how he wiped, the blood stains could not be wiped away. He painfully closed his eyes. Rongyan said, I can feel him, he has already noticed me. I don't have much time left, listen, he cut off the blood pact in order to reassign the blood contract with the Jiao dragon, and at that time, her consciousness blurred and she was unable to continue. But Nangongsi already understood as the last bit of blood on his face disappeared, at that time, Zhongli will only listen to his orders and we, who were currently in Mount Jiao, none of us can escape. We must not let it happen. We must not let it happen. The mother and son unexpectedly spoke in unison. Nangongsi lowered his head to look at his mother. Mother, do you know what to do? Nangongsu's cultivation is not good enough. Rongyan's face flashed with a trace of coldness. He can't control all the Zhenlong chess pieces. So there was a backlash. Because of this, I can understand some of his inner thoughts. I know what to do, listen to me. Rongyan held Nangongsi's arm, her eyes swept around them and finally fell on her husband. Because of the earthquake just now, Nangonglu was awakened. He was holding his basket of oranges, looking around in a daze, as if he did not know what to do. She stared at him, like an eagle staring at a snake in its cave. Someone needs to die. Rongyan's red lips opened as she said, see air, he needs to be sacrificed. End chapter. Dumb Husky and his white cat Shizun. Chapter 224. Mount Jiao, a gentleman's promise. Nangongsi was shocked. Mother. The Jiao Dragon Pact can only be strengthened by the Nangong family's blood sacrifice. Rongyan said, it's either you or him. So of course, it has to be him. He's already a chess piece, a walking corpse. Besides, why should he live? He's an unfaithful husband, an unscrupulous father and disrespectful to his family. He is not even fit to be a man. Who knows why Nangongsu released him from the curse of the Lingqi fruit and only let him become a laughingstock. Nangongsi froze in place, as if he had also become a chess piece. He was so stiff that he couldn't move. Sire, I can't do it myself. Now only you could, just throw him into the dragon soul pool and let his blood flow into the pool. His one lowly life can be exchanged for everyone's safety. It's also, for his good, let him accumulate virtue after death. Before he could react, he suddenly heard someone shouting from the dragon soul pool, "What's going on? Where did these beetles come from?" Beetles. Then, screams came from the hall, one after another, along with the shouts of Shui Zhenyang, Zhang Shi, and the others. Rongyan said anxiously, "Hurry up. The Dragon Tail blood contract has been broken. There are only 2 more contracts left. Once they're completely broken, even if we throw him into the blood pool, it'll be useless." Nangongsi was awakened by her shout. "What's there to hesitate about?" Rongyan said, "He's the one who did all of these evil deeds and caused the Rufeng sect to be in this sorry state today. Sire. Wake up quickly. There's no other choice, you." She suddenly became speechless. Then, her eyes rolled up slightly, her pupils contracted rapidly. Su Xuanglin seemed to have used enormous his spiritual power in order to exert control over her. Rongyan lost her self-awareness. The dreamy expression reappeared on her face. She slowly got up and walked towards the side of heaven. She returned to the inconspicuous spot where she had been at the beginning. Her eyes were empty as she murmured softly, "Sire, tell me, what's the sentence before that? What's the sentence before that?" Nangongsi was trembling. He knelt on the ground, his body shaking. He wasn't under the control of anything, but he felt trapped, with no way out. The world praises but does not advise, the world criticizes but does not discourage. This was what his mother wanted him to do, and it was so difficult. It was really difficult. When he was young, he found it difficult to memorize passages from Carefree Wandering or to hit the red mark 9 times out of 10 arrows. Now, she was telling him that she wanted to use his father's blood to strengthen the blood pact with Mount Xiao. Listening to the wailing screams outside, he could tell from the sound how horrible to awakened dragon's tail that turned into beetles could be. He thought of Ye Wangzi, who was still fighting the streams of snakes alone in the darkness, waiting for him to find out something and go back as soon as possible. "Sire." His mother murmured behind him. He slowly pulled out his sword and walked towards Nangonglu. Hate. How could they not hate him? He looked at this man. How could he not hate him? He dug out his mother's spiritual core while she was still alive. He had an illicit affair with the sect leader of Jiangdong Hall. He wronged Villa Masterly of Beaton Manor. He destroyed the Rufeng sect and left behind a pile of mess and wreaked their reputation beyond repair. He and Ye Wangzi had to live like hunted animals with nowhere to go back to, like stray dogs. How could he not hate him? He raised his sword, and the snowy light illuminated Nangong Liu's face. His face, which was no longer young, had a bit of serenity and calmness that only a child could have. Nangong Lu looked at Nangongsi. Nangongsi's hand trembled. He turned his head and said, "Get up." "Who are you?" "Why should I get up? I want to sit here. I want to wait for His Majesty." "What His Majesty?" Nangongsi angrily shouted at him. His heart was thumping, blood was rushing through his veins. "That's your younger brother, Nangong Lu. That's your younger brother. Even if he's my younger brother, he's still His Majesty. Nangong Lu was shocked and shrunk into a ball. Don't be so fierce. You, why are you crying? Am I crying? Nangong Si thought in a daze. Am I crying? Bitter, salty tears rolled down his face and fell to the ground together with the sword. Nangong Si suddenly knelt on the ground and wailed. Why was it like this? He hated him. He thought he could really hate him to the point that he could force his father to go to the Dragon Soul Pool and use him to reforge the blood contract between Mount Jiao and Zhongli. Why couldn't he hate him enough? It was this person in front of him who left him homeless and ruined his family. Why couldn't he hate him? But he really couldn't do it. When the sword light illuminated this person's face, when he saw the wrinkles at the corner of this person's eyes, what he thought of was actually. It was actually of what happened when he was still very, very young. He stumbled as he chased after Nao Beijing in the Xiaoya courtyard. His legs were unsteady and in the end, he fell. Rong Yan stood in front of him and said to him who was crying loudly, "Stand up by yourself." But it hurt. It really, really hurt. He struggled and tried hard, but he couldn't stand up. He stretched out his hand and begged his mother to hold him and pull him up. But Rong Yan didn't stretch out her hand. He never stretched out her hand to him. In the end, another big warm hand picked him up from the ground and hugged him. The sun shone down and he saw a face. A young, nice, gentleman-like face that was always kind and amenable. Aya, RCR also needs someone to help him up sometimes. This person stroked his soft hair, his eyes very gentle. If you can stand up by yourself, what do you need a father and a mother for? That was Nangong Si's earliest impression of his own father in his memories. In this spacious hall full of living dead, the only living person staggered, stumbled, and crawled up by himself. He got up, but quickly fell on his knees again. He kowtowed 3 times in the direction of Rong Yan, then got up again and turned to leave. Suddenly, his sleeve was pulled. The person who pulled him was actually Nangong Lu. Nangong Lu fished out an orange from the basket and handed it to him. After thinking for a while, he peeled a piece and handed it directly to his lips. Don't cry, although I don't know what you're going to do. But these tangerines are sweet and very delicious. I picked them myself. Here, have a taste. Nangong Si didn't want to eat it, but the piece of orange was right next to his lips. Nangong Lu handed it to him, just like how he fed him countless times when he was young. The sweet and sour juice spread between his lips and tongue. Nangong Si fiercely wiped his tears, finally made up his mind to throw down the long sword, turned around and strode out of the front hall. He came to the side of the Dragon Soul Pool where the chaotic battle was. The beetles transformed from the dragon's tail were too fierce. Many cultivators had already died in battle and the ground was covered in blood. Because the beetles were too small, Chu Wanning, Zhang Shi and the other grandmasters could only protect a few people behind them. The scene was a mess, like boiling soup in a cauldron. No one noticed Nangong Si coming in. He walked into the hall. A few hours ago, he lost his spiritual core and thought that he would be reduced to a mere mortal for the rest of his life. At this moment, he suddenly felt that fate knew that he was ambitious. Although it was not kind to him, it was not cruel to him in the end. The only thing he owed was. His gaze fell on the tunnel leading to the soul summoning platform. Ye Wangzi. Nangong Si suddenly broke into a smile. Fortunately, in the end, he didn't have time to thank her for not leaving him and for her unwavering determination. Fortunately, he didn't have time to tell her that he finally understood her good intentions, her feelings, and that he was willing to be with her forever. Otherwise, for no reason, he would implicate her, then. Plop. Then what? He did not finish his thoughts. If he continued to think about it, he probably would not have the courage to do so anymore. He did not finish his thoughts, so the boiling pool of blood engulfed him. He did not finish his thoughts, and he turned into bones, melting into ashes. The last thing he had been able to do before he died was to untie the quiver at his waist and throw the quiver that his mother had stitched for him along with the howling fey wolf, Neobajin, to the side of the pool. Nangongsi felt that the moment he melted into ashes, he seemed to still be conscious, but it didn't hurt. He seemed to clearly hear the sound of the quiver landing safely on the ground, Neobajin's whining and Chu-wanning calling his name, losing his composure, which was rare. He wanted to respond to him. He wanted to tell him, "Shizun, I acknowledge you. How can I deny you? Actually, I remembered. That year, under the flowering tree, where I've kowtowed to you, the obeisance ceremony. But you didn't want me. I also had my pride. I was afraid that you didn't like my foundation, so I pretended that I was too young at that time and had forgotten. Later, you were willing to recognize me, but I was so afraid of implicating you. It's fine now. I have a Shizun. I finally recited the lines of the carefree wanderings to my mother. Yewangzi and Neobajin are fine. Right, I didn't expect to be able to eat a piece of orange before I died. That person personally peeled it. It tasted the same as the oranges he fed me when I was young. So sweet." Nangongsi's soul suddenly shattered. Everything faded away. Everything became illusions, the past and the dreams had passed. To the blood contract. Suddenly, a dazzling light burst out from the dragon soul pool. Wherever the light touched, the dragon howl and the sword roar could be heard as if it was tearing through dry weeds. It destroyed all the dragon-tailed beetles, dragon-scaled snakes and the dragon tendons that were holding up the horde of fierce corpse outside. They all turned into ashes and crushed into powder. When Yewangzi rushed out of the passageway covered in blood, she saw Nangongsi's figure at the moment he fell into the pool. She saw the blood pool that was illuminated by the dragon light. She saw all the cultivators looking at the blood pool, the sobbing and helpless Neobajin by the pool and Chu Wanning who was hugging Neobajin. Her sword fell to the ground with a clang. "Aussie." Her voice was hoarse, and it almost cracked the sky. At this moment, Yewangzi's entire body was covered in wounds. She staggered forward with a few steps, but before she could reach the side of the blood pool, before she even had the time to shed tears, the heavy injuries and maddening emotions finally destroyed her. The snake venom spread throughout her body. Her bones and blood turned cold as her whole body became icy cold. "Aussie." She slowly staggered over, step by step. Her lips were purple, she choked as she sobbed. Tears rolled down her cheeks. But she couldn't hold on anymore. She fell heavily on the cold brick surface. Her vision turned dark, but she still used her blood-stained fingers to scratch the ground, trying to crawl forward. She knew it was too late. She saw Nangongsi jumped into the dragon soul pool with her own eyes. Everything was clearly over. But she couldn't accept it. How could she accept it? How could she accept it? It was as if she could make that person return as long as she persisted and crawled to the edge of the pool. It was as if Nangongsi could return to her side as long as she persisted for a little longer. He said it before. In front of the snake cave, he clearly promised. He said, "It's too dark here. I know you don't like it. Just hold on for a while. I'll be back soon." Tears rolled down her cheeks. She persisted. She gritted her teeth and persisted. Little by little, she crawled dizzily and spasmed until she reached the edge of the dragon soul pool. "I'm here. What about you? It's very dark in front of you, and the surroundings are very cold. Is there another malicious spirit coming? Is there another venomous snake? Can you be like before? Can you suppress it with a talisman and majestically turn your head around? Tell me again, come with me. I'll protect you." Nangongsi. "Aussie." She choked on her sobs, which eventually turned into a wail. She burst into tears. Come back. A gentleman keeps his word. You have to keep your promise. Come back. But that cry didn't last for long. The vicious poison and emotional trauma finally engulfed her. Before she lost consciousness, the last thing she did was to reach out and touch the wall of the dragon soul pool. It was as if she could grab the clothes of the person in the pool and keep him by her side. Everything was supposed to get better. She would find a way to suppress Asi's unstable spiritual core and everyone wouldn't hate them so much anymore. Supposedly. She was about to make it. But darkness came again. This time, for her, daylight might not come again. Asi. Ye Wangzi murmured and finally slowly closed her eyes. The evil spirit of the Jiao dragon was finally suppressed. Nangongsi sacrificed his flesh and blood to strengthen the bond that was about to be severed. The dragon soul pool that merged with Nangongsi's soul would be difficult for Su Xuanglin to tamper with again. Everything was over. Su Xuanglin won't be able to use even a single blade of grass or tree in Mount Jiao anymore. Nangongsi may not be as capable of Nangong Zhongying, but in the end, he was the one who cut off Su Xuanglin's sharpest claws. No one spoke. Only the faint moans of those who were previously injured could be heard. The light of the dragon soul pool gradually dissipated. Mo Ran walked to Chu Wanning's side. Chu Wanning lowered his head and closed his eyes. The hand that was holding Neo Beijing was pale and cold. Because of his forbearance, light blue veins were slightly protruding under his skin. Shizun. Chu Wanning didn't say anything. In the end, he just put Neo Beijing beside Ye Wangzi, together with Nangongsi's quiver. He stood up. There was moisture in his eyes, but when he looked at the passageway leading to the soul summoning altar, the moisture condensed into frost. He didn't say a word. Tianwen flowed with golden light in his hand. He walked towards the dark passageway. Mo Ran followed him and the disciples of Shi Shengpeak followed after silently. No one asked, no one said anything. They all understood what it meant to take the lead, but they all followed. No one backed down. Then it was the Kunlun Palace and then the Gaiyuye sect. Before entering the passageway, Zhang Shi pointed at a few healers and disciples who were guarding the passageway and said, "You all stay here and take care of the injured, especially Miss Yet. If any of these survivors lose their lives, a whole year's worth of salary and spirit stones will be deducted." Yes, sect leader. The door leading to the soul summoning altar had already been opened. After suffering losses along the way, they arrived to the last place in the Rufeng sect's ancestral heavenly palace. Finally, they arrived at the soul summoning platform. End chapter.